I don't recall seeing anyone specifically getting hit. I do remember hearing sounds of the vehicle striking objects, and the only objects in the road were people at the time.
What happened next, or what do you remember next?
I remember turning to my wife and asking her if all the children were okay, and she looked back at me and said that she didn't know where our son Elliot was. And at that point, I couldn't see him either, so I began running up and down Main Street trying to locate where he was.
Did you have eyes on your 3 other children?
I did.
And what did you do with those 3 kids?
I had those children stay with my wife while I went and tried to find Elliot.
Did you find Elliot?
It was some time after. I would estimate it to be a minute to 2 minutes after the vehicle had passed, but I had located him on the road further to the south, almost immediately towards the curb was, being tended to by some individuals that had covered him up with a blanket.
While you're looking for Elliot, did you see anyone else on the ground?
I did.
Can you describe for the jury what you observed?
There was a lot of individuals laying on the road as you look back, and I remember specifically seeing Father Pat Heppy laying on the ground. I remember he was, at that point when I had saw him, I thought he was deceased because he wasn't moving at all, so I would assume that he was knocked unconscious. I continued past, and then I remember specifically seeing a younger female who I recall to be as Yamilet Perales laying in the roadway. And 2, I thought she was also deceased because there was blood coming from like her ears, and she wasn't moving either.
Did you see anyone else before you found your son Elliot?
There was other people, but I don't specifically recalling at that particular time, no.
Once you found Elliot, what observations did you make of him?
At this point, he was awake. The person that was tending to him indicated that he was knocked unconscious. So when I had found him, he actually regained consciousness, but he was crying and complaining of injuries to his back and to his hip and to his leg.
What did you do then?
Pretty much just, I was told by the individuals that were caring for him that that we needed to keep him there for safety purposes, for like C-spine, making sure they didn't have any significant neck injuries or back injuries, and that we needed to wait there until paramedics arrived.
Did they eventually come and assess Elliot?
Yes. During this time, I had spoken with my wife, and the decision was made that she was going to go get the car because it was, at this point, it was chaos in downtown Waukesha, and I'd actually made contact with a couple of different officers that I knew from the police department, and one of the comments was we didn't know how we were going to get a lot of these injured folks from the street to the hospital that needed care. So a decision was made that I was going to send my wife to go get the vehicle so she can remove our 3 kids that were mobile and remove them from the scene. At that time, I didn't know the extent of the injuries to Benjamin.
And that's what I was just going to ask you about. Were there any observable injuries to Benjamin at the time immediately following the car going through the group?
Objection, leading the witness.
Overruled. You may answer.
I knew that he had been injured because when I had looked over to where he was over on the curb, I had seen that he had some facial injuries, swollen eyes, some lacerations. But he was calm and he was collected, so at that point I didn't know that there was any other injuries to him. After the paramedics had put Elliot on a removable stretcher, I indicated that Benjamin was hurt and I needed to go bring him with us when we went to the hospital. After I went over to him to pick him up, I had looked down and I had realized that he had an open fracture to his left leg.
So what did you do?
I picked him up, and then we ran with the paramedics down to, they called it the casualty collection point, or the point where all the ambulances were caring for individual folks.
And did you ride in the ambulance with Elliot and Ben, or did they go separately?
We went together.
Where did you go?
We went to Waukesha Memorial Hospital.
And what happened once you were at Waukesha Memorial Hospital? What did you see in general?
Yeah, I mean, as working in the city, we go to Waukesha Memorial Hospital quite a bit, and I have never seen anything like this in my entire life. It was pretty much chaos. When we first got to the hospital, there was some sort of physician or EMT that was actually triaging individuals with, I believe it was permanent marker, and they were triaging individuals on their forehead of what level of injury they needed. And based on that, this kind of directed word they had gone inside the hospital. So when we had gone into the hospital, we were directed into the waiting room. And at that point, we were still on kind of like stretchers or backboards. We were placed in the waiting room, and we were just waiting until we could be attended to by some of the staff.
And did both Benjamin and Elliot receive treatment at Waukesha Memorial Hospital?
Yes.
What treatment did they receive, if you know?
Elliot received treatment for a severe concussion. He had a severe ankle sprain. They did a CT scan. And then with Benjamin, he ended up spending the night because the same thing, concussion. They did a CT scan, but then he also had surgery on his broken leg that night.
Now you stated initially when the car was coming towards the back of your group, you thought it may have been someone that just accidentally got on the Christmas parade route, correct?
Objection. That was not the form of the question. Or answer, rather.
Asked and answered, sustained.
So after having your initial thought, did your thought change at some point that this isn't a misguided vehicle?
Yes.
And what did it change to?
Objection, leading the witness.
Overruled. You may answer.
After the vehicle had come through and struck our group, and then as I looked back at all the carnage behind us, it was pretty, my thought then that we were involved in some sort of terrorist act. It was overwhelming fear, overwhelming panic amongst everyone in the downtown Waukesha.